hanging out for a little bit, right?
So the number one question that people asked me.
Oh, you asked people to ask you questions? That's hilarious.
Well, who knew I would be talking to you, who know you, was, so who's going to be driving?
That's a silly question. Come on, who asked that? They obviously don't know me.
You do not like to give the wheel to anybody else, do you?
No, I'm not a good passenger. I'm a terrible passenger.
Hello, making a lot of news lately, selling all of the luxury dealerships.
Well, I sold all but two. Just kept one dealership here and one dealership in Miami. That's it.
Was that hard to, actually walk away from? Even though, that was obviously something you wanted to do. You make a decision, and you're a man who knows what he wants. But was it? It was your baby. You grew it from nothing to something huge and really successful.
No, because the timing was right. So the team was right. Helder especially was right. He was ready. So it's I analogize it to my youngest son going to college. I obviously would love him to live with me for the rest of his life, but probably not the best thing for him. But he was ready to go to college and ready to leave the house. And then the same thing with the dealerships. They were ready. The team was ready. It was the right time. So from that perspective, I felt really good about it, actually.
Was it that you just really wanted to get rid of the Vulcan? If you could just drive one car for the rest of your life, what would it be? Just one brand of car.
Who would want to do that? That's like going to jail.
Is that exciting? It's like going to jail?
One wife, many cars. I find that a lot cheaper. No, you'd never want to be hindered to one car. I couldn't even imagine that. It'd be like asking, if you had to kill one of your children, which one would it be? I wouldn't do it. But if at the end of the day I had to answer that question, I would say Mercedes-Benz, for sure.
Yeah, from the beginning of when we started this series, I wanted to get you in the car and do an interview with you, and forever you were like, no, I don't want to. Do you not like, or are you uncomfortable with the spotlight being put on you?
Yeah, I don't like it. That's not my thing.
Ever since you were young, were you just you like to just be a little bit more quiet and in the background?
Well, we grew up with, there were seven kids in the family, so the spotlight was on you was never a good thing.
Right.
that means you did something really, really bad.
You're in trouble.
Right? No, that's just not my shtick. It's I don't like it. Now people will say, yeah, sure, but everywhere instead of Bernie Moreno Companies, so that's a fair criticism. Although I will say to you that was something I resisted for the first few years when I was here. That's what we called the Collection Auto Group, because I didn't want my name in the spotlight. But it did help unite the company from a branding perspective. So it becomes a little difficult because on the one side, I really don't like my name in the spotlight. But on the other side of the equation, from a good business perspective, you do want to have branding. So I tried to create kind of like a fake brand, which is what Collection Auto Group was. It just didn't work because it didn't mean anything. So when I called it Bernie Moreno Companies, people understood, oh, okay, that's a dealership that Bernie owns. But then it made me look like a little bit like an egomaniac, and that part of it always made me uncomfortable.
Are you somebody who's always looking for something new to challenge you professionally, though? Because you've been in the car business for how long?
Let's see, I'm 28, so no.
I thought it was 29, Bernie.
No, so
I'm 12.
Yeah, perfect. So the 14 years in Cleveland, 12 years in Boston, and then 5 years with General Motors. So that's my career. So whatever that adds up to be, 31 years, I guess. 31 years. Holy Lord.
Did you think you would retire in the car
31
industry?
years.
Yeah, right. You look young too.
You're
like Benjamin Button.
I just got really old. I was hoping the math was wrong. Yeah, so 31 years.
Yeah. Did you think that you would start in the car business and end it in the car business? Did you ever see yourself doing something different than
no,
auto industry?
I always saw myself doing something different. I always loved technology. I've been obsessed with technology since I was a little kid. So I always loved tech. So it was really, what was the right timing? And when I moved to Cleveland 14 years ago and decided this is what I want to do, I actually made a marker for myself at 50. When I turned 50, I'm going to do something different. And I missed it by 2 years. Because again, 2 years ago we weren't ready. We're ready now. for me, this is now a second career to be able to go out and do technology is really, really cool.
So you watch Billions, right?
Yeah.
I know. I love that show.
Yeah.
I love the show.
All the characters are despicable.
They are.
But the show's awesome.
It is. It's so well written.
Yes.
And it was just in one of the recent episodes where they were talking about blockchain, and that's it's this word that to a lot of people is like, well, what's blockchain, or is it a buzzword, and is it the next unicorn in business and in technology? Do you think it is?
Oh yeah. Well, again, it's a fundamental underlying technology that addresses an incredibly important need right now, which is how many people do you know that have had their identity stolen or credit card fraud? It's rampant. It's not, oh, I knew somebody. It's probably 1 degree of separation. Either somebody in your family or a friend that's had that happen, or yourself. So the idea that you store everything in a single database and then put protections around it is just an antiquated concept. Now, blockchain means different things to different people. I can tell you that most of the hate mail I get are from Bitcoin purists that say, no, blockchain's only something that pertains to cryptocurrency. So if you use the word blockchain and you're not talking about a public decentralized system revolving around currency, it's not blockchain. So I take a more broader approach, which is talking about a distributed ledger, the idea that you have data, but instead of being in one place, it's in multiple places and encrypted and protected. That's how we looked at it. So we actually came up with an acronym because I didn't want to use the word blockchain anymore, and we called it a belted system, which is a blockchain encrypted ledger that's executable and distributed.
Say that 10 times fast. You probably can't since you came up with it.
So basically, think of it this way: it's just a different way to organize data. So that's all. So right now, the world organizes data in these single silos. Mm-hmm. Instead of doing it that way, you organize it in a distributed fashion and in an encrypted fashion that's different than the way it works today.
I think whenever there's something new, especially when it comes to technology, a lot of people go, oh my God, that is like, it sounds like a different language or like Swahili to me. Like,
yeah.
So many people say, well, what is blockchain? How do you explain it? And I always think you do such a great job at explaining it, but really it's more like, how does it affect me, right?
Exactly.
That's what people want to know.
Right.
How is it going to pertain to my world? You mentioned identity theft. Like, in what other ways, when you look forward 5-10 years from now, how is it going to affect the masses?
So what we're working on, obviously, is what I think is the biggest. I wouldn't be working on it if I didn't think it was the biggest opportunity, which is vital records. So if you think of right now, in fact, this has happened to me, God, countless times. You show up at the airport and you're flying international. It's happened to me. I was in Newark, and I'm literally walking up to get on the plane, and I noticed the person in front of me took out their passport, and I just went, oh, right? Because I left my passport in Cleveland. So why do you have to have a book with a bunch of stamps that easily can be forged? I mean, that's not really complicated, right? Easily forged. Why can't that be on my smartphone with a barcode that can't be forged, that I scan? So it proves out that it's me through biometrics, through a bunch of other systems, and then I have it there. If I got pulled over right now and a police officer said, can I have a copy of your driver's license, insurance card? Both can be forged, right?
Right.
Why not have that on your smartphone? I give him a barcode, he scans it, he knows it's me, I scan it again, he knows I have insurance. So at the end of the day, having all of your vital records where you own them and control them on your smartphone and your wallet is really important. The other one is your birth certificate, which is a crazy thing. There's a lot of companies now that for a job say, well, we need a copy of your birth certificate. I have no idea what my birth certificate is. I was born in South America in 1967, right, in Bogota. I have no idea what that damn thing is. Somebody asked me 2 or 3 years ago for my naturalization certificate. I have no idea. That's when I became a U.S. citizen. I have no idea what that is. But wouldn't it be nice to have it all under your control? So you have all of your vital records, and you can give people permission based on what you want them to see. So that's a great application for blockchain. So that's what we're working on.
When you read about technology, certainly in its infancy and where it's going to grow, it's happening in Silicon Valley, in Toronto, in Austin, overseas. Cleveland isn't necessarily a name on that list. And you know that.
Yeah, definitely know that.
So for you, as you're trying to build this, is it Cleveland or nowhere for you? Or at some point do you say, if this isn't working for us here, we're going to go somewhere else?
Well, it's for me personally, it's Cleveland because this is where I want to live. So I'm not concerned about me. I'm concerned about the next 7,000 me's. And so what happened? It's pretty straightforward. I came to Cleveland thinking three things. Number one, that I would only be here for 5 years. In fact, my wife and I called it, "Can we do 5 years of hard time?" Right? Meaning, and remember, we lived in Boston.
Sure.
And if you don't live in Boston, there is no other place to live. That's the mentality of somebody who lives in Boston. So it was a short-term stint. Come here, do my thing, and leave. That was number one. Number two was I came here with every dollar I'd ever seen in my life mortgaged to buy one business. And once that happened, I had no money. My kids were in private school. They went to public school. I had a house with indoor pool. I bought a small little house. I was all in, all my money. And plan B was that I would just work at McDonald's. If it didn't work, I figured I could supersize the hell out of every order, right? So that was it. And number three was a knowledge that Cleveland was this kind of town that would just never be part of my life. So that's how I came here. Then fast forward 14 years, I owe all my success to Cleveland because it all started here. If not for Cleveland, I wouldn't be in the position I am today. So for me, it's simple. I love this place. I love this town. I want to give back to Cleveland because it gave so much to me. And if Cleveland doesn't pivot to become a relevant tech city, Cleveland will just die. There is no plan B for Cleveland. There's a plan B for me. There's no plan B for Cleveland because we can't continue to not be competitive with cities all over the world. And if we just ignore technology and say, oh, well, we'll do a little smattering here and a little smattering here, or let's double down on manufacturing, or hey, we're great at healthcare, it's not enough because all those businesses are about technology. And at the end of the day, we've already kind of seen it. There's been a massive population drain that's unprecedented here. I was with a friend the other day who happened to be from Cleveland, but now lives in Dallas. And they were talking about how they read an article that Cleveland's celebrating 20,000 residents in downtown for the first time, and what a great marker that was for the city. I was saying that, right? Because I'm a big cheerleader wherever I go, and I'm a big believer that everybody in Cleveland needs to be a cheerleader for Cleveland when they're not here, because you never know where those conversations will lead. Anyway, she turns to me and says, 20,000 residents, 130,000 people moved to Dallas last year. So 130 for the year, 20,000 total, right? And so that it makes you really understand we need to grow population strategically, and that's going to happen by bringing young people here. What do young people want? Technology. It's that simple. So that's what really BlockLand's all about. It's not about blockchain. It's about that. How do we make Cleveland a top 5 relevant tech city?
You've done a lot of interviews about BlockLand/blockchain. And so you've gone on record saying, when people say, like, how was that whole idea born? You talk about going on road trips with your son, Kevin, and coming up with, like, the next $1 billion idea. So you've talked about that a lot. What I'm curious about then is, once you have an idea like this, like you, Bernie Moreno, how do you start to move on it then? Like, you've got the idea, and then what's the next step for you to start implementing it and making it happen past just it being an idea in your brain?
Yeah, so this one was an idea that turned into a career, that turned into a life-altering pivot for my life, right? So that one was not taken lightly. My son and I, we went through a bunch of different things. He has one that he's launching that's going to be a big deal for him, called Half Cost Hotels. That was from a road trip like this. And for me, blockchain was understanding what was happening with Bitcoin, understanding the underlying technology, and then third-party validation. So the idea that companies like PwC, Deloitte, E&Y, KPMG, Bernstein, these amazing multinational companies were putting so much effort and energy around blockchain, was like, they're a lot smarter than I am. So if their thinking is important, I need to learn on it and see what it's all about. And then from there, okay, the technology is going to be big. This is going to be a seismic shift. What are some things that I can do that I know about? And that's how the idea of the car title piece came. Because I know, because in our world, meaning the car dealership world, you ask any person who's in a car business, car titles are the abomination of the car business. It's a nightmare. Nightmare. It's a nightmare from 70 different perspectives. and I knew blockchain could fix that. So then it was like, what's the size of the market? Okay, we're going to do this thing. Let's go out and build this technology. And that's how really BlockLand was born, because as I started to do that, all the smart people around me were like, well, you can't do this in Cleveland. What do you mean you can't do this in Cleveland? And no, Cleveland's not a place you start a tech company. You should do that somewhere else. And that's where BlockLand was born. So it wasn't about me, because I can control that. I'm going to do it here. Right? I'm going to build a company here, one way or the other. But for everybody else, BlockLand's about making it that the natural place that you start a tech company is Cleveland.
Yeah. So you get an idea, you look for a need, because you're not going to put all of your effort into something where there isn't going to be a need.
Yeah.
And you don't see room to grow. And then you start calling your contacts that you know and saying, let's have conversation about this, or...
No, so the first question I ask myself is, who would be against this? That's what I ask myself. So who would be opposed to this? Who would think this is a terrible idea? Who would be on the other side fighting you? And if the answer is very, very, very little resistance, then that's a big opportunity, right? Because if nobody's against you and it's a great idea, then you have tailwinds, right? If you have a lot of people against you, that's not necessarily the best idea, because there's going to be a lot of fight. That's kind of the same analysis with Kevin's idea with half-cost hotels. Who's going to be opposed? Now, in his case, the enemy is these online travel agencies, but that's okay, because the power really rests with the hotels. So that's a good idea for him. So with Champ Titles, for us, that was a no-brainer, because there's very little resistance. Then finding people who are smarter than I am is another key part of it. So we have Shane Bigelow, brilliant guy. He jumped on board. And,
what does he do?
He's my CEO. But the other thing is that he also has massive skin in the game. He left a very, very high-paying job with a lot of runway, a lot of future, to take a dramatic pay cut. And so he has a stake in the game. Our CTO, Bo Shim, the same thing. He had a great job, great career path. Big leap for him to do that. Randy Cole, who came from the Turnpike, he could have had an amazing career in the government. This is a big deal for him and his family. So when we're all in it together and we all have the same kind of make this shit work, then that's how really magic happens in my opinion.
So have you had that moment yet where you've been with this group, or just yourself or your family, and you go, you know what? I think this is gonna happen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What can you remember and take me back to that exact moment?
It's seeing how they all understood the depth of the problem in terms of how car titles can that whole ecosystem, and the way they can explain it and expand beyond things that I think about. What I want to do is, I never want to be the person that creates all the ideas in a group, because I just don't think that I'm smart enough to be able to make that happen. So when you see others around you coming up with much better ideas than you had, that's when you sit there and go, I chose well. But I think one of the things, two criticisms that I have of Cleveland, Northeast Ohio generally, number one is the idea that we don't think big enough. Like, we always think there's big, amazing things like that don't happen in Cleveland, they happen somewhere else. That's just not true. We can do great things. And by the way, we were talking about Baker Mayfield earlier. God, I love that guy. I've never met him. I don't know anything about football, but I love that about him, is that he's brought that energy to the Browns fans, and boom, overnight you've seen this change where Browns fans are now thinking, when does the season start? We're going to kill it this season.
Yeah.
That's Baker Mayfield. Again, he's not the whole deal, but he stimulated the idea that, hey, we're here to win, and we're going to do big things. And you know what? If you're not at the football game on Sunday, get your butt to the football game on Sunday and be there and cheer for your team. He's like that. And I think if we have more people like that, Cleveland can think bigger and bolder. And of course, we're way too self-deprecating. Cleveland needs to just stop that. That just needs to end. That just needs to be snap of fingers, like in the movie The Avengers, the guy just snaps his fingers with all the jewels, and Cleveland stops being self-deprecating. Because it's extreme. End that game. Because it's extraordinarily harmful to the culture that's important to build in Cleveland.
But don't you think, because I was born and raised here, so I feel like it's a comparable example would be like if somebody in your family, keep this PG, like they're not so great, right? They're kind of jerk. We'll say use the word jerk rather than a swear word. I gotta mind my P's and Q's around you. Like I can say my brother's a jerk, which he's not if he's watching, but I could say that, but you can't say it about him. Don't you think that's how Clevelanders are? Like
No.
I can say I don't like my city, but if you do, I'm gonna stand up for it.
That's new. So I'd say that at the end of the day, like I said, we're 80% of the way there. I think people from Cleveland were perfectly happy to have other people disparage Cleveland. You got to understand, I came from 12 years of indoctrination in Boston. Boston is the most prideful city on earth. I mean, it's almost strange. To the T, it's almost like it becomes part of your DNA where everything Boston is better than anything anywhere else. Conversely, you go to Cleveland, right? So I'm not saying that maybe we need to become egotistical like Boston, but we need to have pride. Even you look at a city like Detroit, people think, oh, Detroit, all right, Detroit. People in Detroit love Detroit. They'll tell you Detroit's a great place, and they have no problem telling you how much they love Detroit. So I think that's really important. I think, and again, we're 80% of the way there. Dan Gilbert, when I first got here, he had just gotten here. He talked about that in that speech back then. His first speech that I listened to in Cleveland, and I'd only been here like a month. I'm like, wow, that's exactly how I feel. That's crazy. Here's this guy saying this. So it's not just me, because it was so stark for people who aren't from here. And I think you'll find that people who weren't born and raised in Cleveland are the ones that are the biggest cheerleaders for Cleveland.
When you look at some of the names and the people who built the city, it's pretty fascinating. And obviously Rockefeller is the most recognizable name. And so I think, oh, how cool would it have been to have known him and get into his mind and see, like, how did he have the foresight to know how to develop the city and make sure that he left a legacy for generations who were never going to know him. And I hear you wanting to do the same thing. It's like, you're not going to like this because you don't like the comparison, but I feel like you've become like our modern day Rockefeller in town. I knew you would hate that.
I hate that one.
I'm sure you do, but there's some, I'm saying this as, you know, not a family member of yours, just looking at it from the outside, the fact that you want to grow something in this town and invest in it, and you're looking past generations when maybe you aren't even going to be here anymore. You're looking to build something that will last forever. I think that's cool. Like, does that come from your parents and how you were raised to give back and to look ahead that way?
You know, one of the other first speeches I heard when I came to Cleveland was from Albert Ratner, and he said that his mom used to tell him all the time that you need to focus on your family, your community, and your business, and in that order. And it's funny, but he said that because that was the same way we were raised. You know, family first, for sure. That's unequivocal. But then you really have to give back to your place, because, you know, everybody's giving gifts. You know, we have opportunities. I mean, did I earn what I have? Sure, of course. I mean, I'm not going to certainly argue about that. But were there things that happened fortunately for me? Absolutely. Did I have the fortune of having great parents that raised me and being able to get the best education possible? Sure. So that means that I owe it to give back to the community to get that equality of opportunity to happen around. That's really, really, really important. So giving back to Cleveland's, again, I would not be in the position I'm in right now if it weren't for Cleveland. Just wouldn't. I had dealerships in Massachusetts, Kentucky, and Florida. I still have a dealership in Florida. But none of that would have happened if not for Cleveland. So you have to give back to the community. And we have, and by the way, I'm not alone. There's so many people in Cleveland that think the same way I do. They give back, and there's so many legacies of people who do that here. It's a great place from that perspective as well. It's a very, very giving place. What I want to do, though, is see if we can channel all those efforts around this concept of building this relevant tech city in Cleveland. That for me, I think if we all oar in that same direction, we can do some great things. Cleveland's at its best when we collaborate. That's what I found. We're at our worst when we're off in a bunch of different directions. But when all of Cleveland's aligned, can do amazing things. Look at the RNC. Forget politics, because it's not about Republican versus Democrat.
Right.
But we pulled off genuinely the greatest political convention probably in U.S. history in terms of the way, not in terms of the content, because we didn't control that, but the way it was executed was literally flawless.
Right.
I mean, remember the police shooting in Dallas had just happened weeks earlier.
Yeah.
But when you walk through downtown Cleveland during the RNC, man, the esprit de corps that you felt in downtown and the way visitors were blown away. And we even had a great weather during that
It was
time.
incredible. It really was.
Why did that happen? Because all of Cleveland came together and said, we're going to do this right. We're going to do it really, really well. So when we collaborate, when we unite, there's nothing we can't do.
Isn't that true of any successful unit or team, though?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Who was your greatest business mentor, and what was the best lesson that they taught you that has stayed tried and true?
Well, it's a good news, bad news thing. So I would say that the guy I worked for in Boston for 12 years, I probably learned a lot from him, good and bad. I learned from him this idea of anything is possible, set high expectations, reach for the moon, reach for the stars. Literally, it's all in your head. If you want to be successful, you just decide you're going to be successful. And from him, I learned that. Now, on the other side of the equation, I also learned from him to watch what successful people do and copy that, and watch what unsuccessful people do and avoid that. And the one lesson I learned starkly from him was to do the opposite of what he did when it came to the way he valued the people who worked for him. And he definitely is not a person that cares too much about people. And I saw the effects of that, so I said, okay, well, I'm going to take his advice then.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the opposite and really value the people who work for me. I think that's really, really important. And also, I would say lastly, he has a zero work-life balance, and I saw that that's not something I want to emulate. And so the importance of understanding that work at the end of the day is not an end but a mean, and understanding that there's this balance and that. And then I'd say from the other part of it, certainly my mom was a big influence in my life. This idea of giving back to the community. My dad also was somebody who said, if you're going to do something, it doesn't matter if you're a shoe shiner, you're going to be the best shoe shiner in the world. And have that mentality that says, no matter what you do, be the absolute best at what you do.
So your parents, was there pressure on you to make a lot of money? Is that what was seen as success or not? Or was it to be happy and good at what you did?
No, my parents never talked about money from that perspective, ever. Never. In fact, my mom probably much more so than my dad would find that conversation kind of ugly. Yeah. The idea that you want to be wealthy or rich or that kind of thing, it was always, that was almost like something you should be embarrassed about. It was really more how that you should look at it. But being successful meant doing great things. Or whatever that meant, whatever doing great things means, isn't about money. It's two different things. Doesn't mean that they aren't sometimes linked, but it had nothing to do with that. Now, my dad, on the other hand, was, he liked toys. So
well,
he was more materialistic in that regard. Yeah. Right. So I would say they were definitely, my parents were definitely of the philosophy that money doesn't buy happiness, but it helps.
Yeah, it buys you things.
It buys some cool things.
It buys cool things.
Right,
and that's true.
Right,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that, right.
And is that the same philosophy you teach to your children?
For my kids, it's very much that way. And I would say, I would add the biggest thing for them, I just want them to do what makes them really happy and passionate and excited every single day. When I see my son working on his startup, I'm telling you, it makes me so happy to see him so passionate. When I see my daughter working on the political stuff that she's working on, and she loves it, just loves it. And it doesn't matter to her that she's working 18 hours a day on it. It's just she genuinely loves what she's doing. My older son, I have no idea how he got this because it wasn't for me, but he loves animals. I mean, he'll spend 2 months this summer in a hut in South Africa working in wildlife rescue. I would go to prison for 2 months before I would get on a plane to South Africa to live in a hut for 2 months working on wildlife rescue. I just would never do that.
But you admire that about him.
But I love that he's so passionate about it. Yeah. And he does it, and he understands that he could do things that would make him a lot more money, but and I don't discount the fact that it may end up making him very financially successful, but it's not what I lead with. And my oldest daughter, she jokes that she makes 89 cents an hour in New York City being a therapist, but she works for people who need help, and she gets a lot of joy out of helping people. So for that perspective, it's like mission accomplished. When you have 4 kids that are doing 4 things that make them so happy, that have nothing to do with making money or not making money. That doesn't mean that, again, at the end of the day, they won't end up financially successful that way. But having them do what they love is the most important.
Do you look back on some of your setbacks and failures and appreciate them?
Oh, yeah.
Because you see where they got you?
I wouldn't, they say, first of all, you can't go back in time. At least that's what they say. We're joined by NASA, see that's true, but they wouldn't tell us anyway. But, so you can't go back in time, but so you can't change the past, and you should never want to, because what your present is made up of is all these things from the past. And even though you say, well, that's really a horrible thing that happened here, or a horrible thing that happened here, it's just part of what made you who you are today.
What was something that you went through that at the time you were wishing away, and now you go, oh, I see why that happened now?
Well, it's probably for me, there's been very, very, very dark days on the financial side of things. Like when I was a kid, meaning in my 20s, I probably spent the same amount of money as I spent today, even though I was in my 20s, I had no money. That probably was not a good idea. And so there were times when I would go home with chills, literally thinking about bills that were waiting for me to get paid, having absolutely no idea how those bills would get paid. That's a really shitty feeling. But the reality is it makes you stronger, because you realize if I can make it through that, I can make it through anything. So that would say that those were tough days. When the ones that were maybe harder, because my mom used to have an expression, or has an expression, that says if a problem can be solved with money, it's not really a problem, which is an interesting way to look at finances. But I'd say that the harder ones for me personally were people who I gave everything I could to those people, did everything I could to make them successful, gave them all the love that I could possibly give them as a coworker, and then they stab you in the back.
Yeah, loyalty issues.
Yeah, so have I had one of those? I've had more than my fair share of those. Mostly in Cleveland, around the car business, probably a half a dozen that were really painful. People who you thought, wow, how could you do that to me after what I did for you? And you want to go to their house and rip up their landscaping. But then
did you do that? Did you hire anyone to do that?
May have thought about it. But that said, that's probably not a good idea.
Down the street for $15.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Yeah, here's $100.
It'd make you feel so much better. But at the end of the day, it didn't. You know what I found is it's never going to deter me from doing the same thing again. That I wouldn't give all that loyalty and love and respect to the next person because I got jilted by somebody else. So I gave myself a pat in the back for not feeling that way.
Good for you that it didn't change you. Because that's a really great quality, right? To give and to be generous and to trust and to want to help mentor someone or help them grow. Like, you don't want to change that about you.
No. And then I look at situations like Helder Rosa and I go, wow. I mean,
Who's at Mercedes-Benz
Homestead. Yeah, he is a guy who came here when he was 26 years old. I took a big bet on him. He took a big bet on me. He spent time learning and understanding and listening and growing. And I look at that and I go, I have more pride around how he's doing than maybe he has around how he's doing. So for all the half a dozen other guys that stab me in the back and I don't even want to think about them, I look at Helder and I go, it was worth it. It was worth it because of if I could be that successful, having made a difference for Helder, it made all the other ones and all that pain be worth it.
Let's talk about Helder a little bit more since you brought him up. Only because of the context now of how you view him and how you feel about him. Probably almost like he was a child of yours, right? That you grew up through the business.
Younger brother.
You're right.
He's 40.
I know, right? Right to say that. Well, we knew Helder.
He's my Portuguese younger brother. Portuguese younger brother. Yeah.
Okay, so with Mercedes-Benz of North Olmsted. A lot of people, they just call you, right? I'm just going to call Bernie. This is what I want. You were the guy. Now Halder's the guy. But he has worked in tandem with you from Boston to now. Like,
half his life.
Yeah, right? That's a long time. Half your
entire
life. His life.
Yeah. Not half his career. Half of his entire life.
So, like, he was an extension of you and vice versa. You were occupying the same space. You were in the same office.
Yep.
He knows, you taught him, did you teach him everything you know, or did you hold back anything?
No, I mean, I taught him everything I could teach him. But, you know, he's a person that has an incredibly natural, phenomenal personality. And so he taught me a bunch of stuff, too. So Helder's a very warm and caring person. So I would say we taught each other things. I wouldn't say that Helder is somebody who only learned from me. I think we learned from each other, which makes the whole deal be worthwhile.
What did you learn from him?
How to be a person that's that genuinely warm and caring. He really is that way. By the way, you know, I come here because, A, we're driving around aimlessly, but 2, because look how great that is. Tell me this isn't amazing that people in Cleveland should just come here once in a while and just drive down Brook Park Road, come to NASA Parkway, just read the sign on the that says there, and think about what it must feel like to come in here to work every single day.
It's
and
beautiful.
Look at that, the benefit
For the benefit of all.
For the benefit of all. And isn't that how all of us, shouldn't that be a slogan for all of us in our job? We're going to turn around here so that we don't get shot at by security. But I just love coming here for that sign. It pumps me up. So now, you know that the people who watch this, to some extent, are going to say, he's driving this GT2 RS, and he's driving Andrea around, and so we're just going to drive 30 miles an hour the whole time. Well, we can't do that, Andrea. So as I said, clickbait. So this is, I know, a little bit of anxiety, but this is a 690 horsepower Porsche, right?
I know.
So we have to take it out for a little bit of a run, right? Just a little bit. All right. So
much better than Cedar Point.